Welcome to the New York Business Leaders Podcast, presented by the Coyle Group. We interview the most interesting and influential business leaders in New York and hear their stories of success, challenges, and lessons learned while building their businesses and personal brands. New episodes drop weekly, so please be sure to subscribe to get updates in your favorite stream. Without further delay, here's your host of the New York Business Leaders Podcast, Gordon Coyle.
Welcome back to the New York Business Leaders Podcast. I'm Gordon Coyle, and today I welcome Carla Rojas to the show. Carla is the owner of Choose Your Mindset, an HR consulting and human capital optimization firm located in Westchester County, New York. Our conversation revolves around a lot of HR topics on the minds of business leaders today, dealing with remote working, productivity, optimizing talent, recruiting and retaining talent, and many of the tools and strategies that Carla has developed for small and medium-sized private employers. If you're facing employee issues, you'll want to listen to this show. Lots of good information here. Thanks for listening or watching this show. Don't forget to rate it or to give it a thumbs up. And as always, please subscribe. Lastly, if you have an interesting story that you'd like to tell on this podcast, drop me an email and let's chat. Thanks. Now, on to the show. Hey everyone, I'm Gordon Coyle from the New York Business Leaders Podcast. Today, I'm really happy to have Carla Rojas on with us. Carla is an HR experienced individual and has a business called Choose Your Mindset, which we're going to get into in a minute. But I'd like to just ask Carla to take a couple of minutes and introduce herself and explain her business a little bit. Go ahead, Carla.
Sure. Thank you for having me, Gordon. As you mentioned, I have 20 years of experience with human resources, having been in-house, working with companies of all sizes and helping them strategize their people component so it supports their business plan. And in doing so, a couple of years ago, I decided I could do this for the little guys. I could do this for the smaller in entrepreneurial companies that are starting out, the startups, and who really can't afford a strategic, seasoned human resources director, but need it. Because when you build a strong foundation with your people, your business will grow from that. And so, that was my focus 6 years ago when I started my business, was to really partner with smaller businesses and help them build a strong talent strategy. And I've been doing it ever since, and I love what I do.
That's great. Can you explain your company name, Choose Your Mindset, how you got to that?
Yeah, sure. So Choose Your Mindset, part of the services that I offer are HR consulting, executive coaching, and talent optimization. And all of those three services, as a business owner, as a manager, as a leader, you have to come to the table with a specific mindset, right? You're deciding you're either going to do this and try to do it well and learn all you can, or you can just say, you know what, I am who I am and everyone needs to get used to me. And so choosing your mindset derived from really understanding what is your mindset in terms of what is your role within an organization and how you would like to be perceived and how you want to show up. Furthermore, I feel that, your mind is your strongest muscle. And if you exercise that muscle, it really can manifest things for you. Events, opportunities, business relations. So where is your mindset? Where do you want it to be? What is the outcome that you're looking for? And how do we get that muscle stronger? So that's the work that I do.
That's great. You touched on something a second ago that you said, talent optimization. I love that phrase. Can you tell us what that's about and how business owners should view that and kind of maximize it? Because tying in with what you said earlier on, talent is your biggest asset, your mind is your biggest asset, all of that. How does that really work? And what are the end results of talent optimization?
Absolutely. So talent optimization at its core is understanding who you are as a leader and understanding your individual team members. If you have that basic understanding of what drives them, of what motivates them, of who they are, how to communicate with them, you become, as a leader, a better leader. You help your team become more engaged, and you're able to build a successful strategy for each individual. It's, no longer, the days of one size fits all is gone. We see this in marketing, we see this in branding, like everything is curated now. And so the same goes for how you manage your team. You really need to curate the experience to each individual team member. So talent optimization is understanding the person at its core and helping them identify their true self, from making sure you have the right people in the right roles, ensuring that you're continuously inspiring them to grow and develop, understanding how to bring together those individuals into a team dynamic and maximizing the efficiency and productivity of a team, and then being able to take a step back and analyze and understand what's working and what's not, and tweaking as you go, because things will change and people will change. And every time, you add a member to a team or someone leaves, the dynamic will change. And as a leader, it is your responsibility to manage through that. So at the end of the day, talent optimization is understanding your people, having a strategy in place, and being able to tie that back to the business so that you can continue to grow and be profitable.
Got it. And it seems to me today that, in the world of hyper competition, really, you used the term curated before, in real niche markets, there's a battle for talent, there's a battle for the customer. I would just imagine that talent optimization just, is really accretive to the bottom line.
Absolutely. Yes. It's, once clients start to engage and understand and execute on talent optimization, what we start to see is, a decrease in turnover, an increase in engagement, an increase in productivity. Engaged employees are loyal. They stick with you. They will go through the fire with you and for you. And, it's such a critical piece of being a leader. And I think oftentimes people forget that. And honestly, it doesn't take much. It's really just about, you don't have to have a huge budget. You don't have to spend a lot of money on team building activities or happy hours or trips or, those are all nice. But at the end of the day, it's about understanding the individual, knowing how to communicate with them, and really understanding what their needs are so that you as a leader can fulfill those needs and help them get to the next step.
Yep. So along the same lines, like who you mentioned, like you serve a wide variety of companies, from startups to small businesses. What are the ideal clients that you want to work with that you think you can have the most impact with?
My ideal clients typically can be from any industry. So it's industry agnostic. The clients they're suffering. They have a pain point. And their pain point is keeping them up at night. Their pain point is affecting the way they're conducting business. And their pain point is affecting their ability to retain their talent. Ideally, the client has employees anywhere from 20 employees to 150 employees. I feel like I like that size client because we can see an immediate impact within, 30, 60 days. I have clients coming back to me saying, it's like night and day from when we started working with you until now. So there's a lot more that we can, that I can help them with in a shorter amount of time. Having said that, I also work with large clients. One of my largest clients has 1,500 employees. I work alongside or I partner with their human resources division across the entire country in 4 different regions. So oftentimes my larger clients need the help. They need that guidance and that strategy. And my role is to ensure that they learn how to do it and apply it within their organization.
That's great. So you brought up a couple of points that made me think about some of the challenges that business owners are facing today. Over the last, I lost count, I guess it's 20 months or something like that. We've had COVID. It's really changed the dynamic of work as we know it, especially for office type workers, professional office workers. Can you tell us a little bit about the Great Resignation and what you saw in that and what opportunities? I mean, there's certainly challenges for a lot of employers, but there's also got to be opportunities there. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So the Great Resignation, it's we're employers everywhere are experiencing it, and it was brought on because of the pandemic. Why? Well, we changed the workplace landscape. People were working remote. They were working hybrid. They were realizing, their health was at risk, and they were realizing that maybe I don't love my job. Maybe I'm not feeling fulfilled. Maybe, there's better opportunities. I can leave this expensive state that I live in and have, now that I'm working remote, and I can work from home and work anywhere in the world. So all of these things contributed to employees taking a look at their lives, taking a look at their career, and reassessing what is important to them. So what I would challenge my clients to think is, don't be afraid of the Great Resignation. Instead, look at it from, this is your opportunity for the great retention. How do you retain your most valued employees? Don't worry about the things you can't control. Worry about what you can control. What kind of work environment are you creating? How do you involve and engage your employees? Are you meeting their needs professionally, emotionally? And this is the work that we're doing now. As I mentioned earlier, it changed the landscape. It changed the companies that thought they could never work from home or have employees who worked from home were forced to very quickly. And with the technology out there and with the capabilities that, and quite frankly, the ability of the employee, that became a reality and a successful one at that. And so employers started to realize, well, I think I can be more flexible now. And I will say that the employers who are forcing or who are insisting, I should say, employees to be back in the office, they're losing their employees because at the end of the day, they just want a choice. They want the choice to whether to go back or to come in or to work from home, I should say. The workplace has changed, the landscape has changed. And now if you're an employer and you're not offering the ability or the flexibility to your employees to have the choice to work from home or not, you're probably going to lose them. Because what the pandemic taught us was that it is possible. Is it possible to do that 5 days a week? Maybe not. But it is possible. And I think at the end of the day, giving those employees the flexibility or the ability to make that decision for themselves is fulfilling a need or that an employee might have.
Last week, interesting point. Last week I was with at not a convention, a conference with a bunch of insurance agents. So you can imagine how fun that was.
Lots of fun.
But there was a lot of conversation. Most of these folks were agency principals, owners of agencies, large and small, across the U.S. And there was a lot of conversation around productivity and working from home and how do you measure it and how do you provide that flexibility. I guess the challenge is for any employer is you used a word emotionally, like being able to emotionally engage. As employers, we've been taught not to emotionally engage. And now it's like a brand new world. And you're like, oh, you gotta understand people's feelings and, what their emotions are and what their preferences are. It really complicates things for employers. And where I was kind of going with it was a lot of these small and medium-sized business owners, insurance brokers, they're puzzled. They just don't know what the right move is. Sure, we know what the Fortune 500 companies are doing. They're spending millions of dollars a month on, office space on Park Avenue in Manhattan or wherever across the country, and they've got to try to get those offices filled so that doesn't go to waste. But for small business owners, it's kind of a different story. So how would you kind of coach an employer who's never had to emotionally engage with their employees? It's brand new. Where's the starting point? How would you do that?
The starting point is just having a conversation. What is important to you? How can I set you up, or how can I support you in working from home and managing all of the responsibilities that you have going on? I think it's really just, it's a conversation. Now, we talked a little bit about talent optimization. Part of talent optimization is taking the guesswork out of trying to figure out your employees. So when you talk about these smaller, insurance brokers or business owners, how do they, it's navigating people is so complex. How do I do it? I'll take the guesswork out for you, because we have an assessment that allows us to measure what essentially drives and motivates these individuals and what their needs are. So by having those results in front of you, I'm also able to provide you with coaching. I'm also able to provide you with techniques to specifically manage a conversation or have a conversation with that individual. It's, at the end of the day, it's not about, what I'm saying is, it's not about being this individual's best friend or getting to understanding that team member's entire life. I know a lot of employers want to keep business and personal separate, and I can understand that. But at the end of the day, we're human beings. We don't operate only in our roles. We have other roles that we wear, other hats. We're parents, we're spouses, we're siblings, we're community workers, we're volunteers, and we're neighbors. And so it's about the responsibilities that the individual is carrying and understanding them and being able to say, okay, I want you to enjoy work. I want you to be productive. I want you to be engaged, but I also want you to be a good citizen to everyone else in your life. And when you think about it, we spend so many hours at work, right? We spend a third of our lives at work. If we're engaged and we're fulfilled as employees, we're going to be better people to our we're going to come home and we're going to be a better parent. We're going to be a better spouse, because we don't have the stress and we don't have the resentment or the angst if we're unhappy at work, right?
Yeah.
And
yeah,
so
I'm
sorry.
I didn't mean to interrupt you there. But it's funny. I was thinking earlier when you were talking about optimization, I was going to ask you, how does an employer, get the warning signs that there's, danger ahead? And I think you just answered it. It's not waiting until you get to that point. It's understanding through your assessment process where people's minds are. So maybe do you want to just expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, it's two things. It's understanding where they are and understanding yourself as a leader if you've met those needs. And part of our assessment process, we have what we call our management strategy guide, where you score yourself as a leader, as a manager, and say, am I doing this for this individual? Have I attempted to provide them with these things that they need? And whether that's a communication style, whether it's opportunity for growth, opportunity to lead, all of these variables that come in. So there's that guide that you can use as a manager to say, am I doing all of this? And score yourself and say, okay, well, I'm not doing this because I know for myself, I can't let go of that control. I need to have that control. But maybe understanding that about yourself as a leader and having that conversation with the individual allows for opportunity to occur, right? Let's try small. You don't necessarily need to give them the keys to the kingdom, but you might say, you know what, why don't you take the lead on this project and let's see how you do. And I'm here if you need me, but I really want to see how you can do with this particular project or this particular client.
Right.
And, I think oftentimes what owners realize is that they're pleasantly surprised. They're pleasantly surprised by their employees.
Yeah.
And, we talk about measuring productivity from home. The easiest way is to clarify what the goals are, clarify what the deliverables are for the business, and the expectation of those deliverables. If the person does it, if that employee does it, whether it takes them 10 hours or it takes them 2 hours, they've completed the project or they've completed the deliverable. That should be what matters. It shouldn't matter how long it takes. Of course, if they're, struggling, you want to step in. But the reality is, for business owners, my advice would be clarify what the expectations are and clarify what the deliverables are. And then let them do it. Right. Offer help, offer resources, and then let them do it. And if you see that they can take on more, you say to them, I think you can take on more, how about we try this? And it's a conversation. And I think oftentimes as principals, we don't have the time to have those conversations, but those conversations can go a long way.
Yep. And I think what you mentioned earlier is that a lot of business owners, and I know it for myself and a lot of my friends who are in the business, they have a real problem with letting go and delegating. And it's like, well, I can do it faster, I can do it better, and at the end of the day, that's just, kind of a bunch of nonsense. And you're kind of preventing your people from growing into a new role that would be good for them and good for you. So, what's the lever you have to convince owners and executives to delegate and let people do the things that is probably in their highest and best use and not yours?
That's a great question. And again, it goes back to, it depends on the individual. I worked with a CFO many years ago who was, she held those reins really tightly. And the team was complaining that they felt that they didn't get growth opportunities because she wouldn't trust them. It's really what it comes down to, is trust. And and when I approached her and I said, well, this is how the team feels. What do you think is happening here? She said, well, I don't trust them. I think that they're going to make mistakes and we can't afford to have mistakes being made. So then we took a step back and we looked at her workload. And what was happening was she was so in the weeds that it wasn't allowing her to be strategic. So we talked about, what are the things that you're willing, what is your risk appetite on certain projects? And we started there. And slowly but surely, she would delegate a project to an individual who, having been assessed, we recognize that this individual is someone who pays very close attention to the details. They are going to cross their T's and dot their I's. And yes, that comes through in this assessment. And so when I said to her, well, look at this individual, based on his assessment, this is somebody who takes great pride and great care in the execution of his work. Why don't we start there? And we did. And that person proved her wrong, right? That person was able to complete the task. And then it became, okay, they did it once, can they do it again? And so again, she gave another project. And then before you know it, that person was able to build her trust in being able to delegate. And I think for that particular CFO, it was just being able to see the assessment and saying, okay, I don't have to guess or hope that this person can carry through. I know based on how they're wired, how they're structured, that their output is as critical to them as it is to the organization. And so she started to, she wouldn't, those that didn't score as high or didn't have that same perfectionist behavior in their assessment results, she was less inclined to delegate to. But oftentimes it's just a matter of, well, here's the proof. Let's give it a shot.
Yeah.
And the other piece, one more thing, is clarifying. I think, at the end of the day, it's about clarifying what those expectations and what the deliverables should look like.
What I was going to say is it seems as though that the assessment process is a very strategic tool to give leaders a higher degree of confidence in what they do delegate and what they can expect from their employees in return for what they give them, that I would never have thought of it. It's more than just a feel-good tool. It's a strategic tool.
It's insights.
Yeah.
When we think about insights and data, right? Most often we make our decisions based on data. Mm-hmm. What has been proven? What do we know, or what do we believe? What do we know has worked or has occurred or has happened, and what are the results? This is data. It's giving you data on an individual that will allow you to predict the behavioral outcome of that individual, how they will behave in an organization. Right. And by having that data, you can make informed decisions. It takes the guesswork out of it.
Yep.
So yes, it's very strategic. It's very insightful. And at the end of the day, to your point, it's not a people tool. It's a business tool. Mm-hmm. It's a management tool. It will help inform decisions about the business, about the individuals moving forward.
Got it. So one of the greatest challenges that employers have today, we talked about the Great Resignation. The flip side of it is, how do employers find talent? How do they recruit them? How do you kind of intersect in that scenario with employers that are struggling to find talent to fill roles that may have been vacated by the Great Resignation?
Mm-hmm. So the first step is understanding what is the business need. Oftentimes someone leaves. I'll see a principal say, we just need to replace them. What has a business changed? What is the outcome for the business? What are we trying to achieve? So it's taking a step back and saying, just because someone's left, we're not just going to replace them, but we're going to understand how this fits into the bigger business picture, right? The bigger workflow. So understanding what it is that the business needs and understanding what success looks like in that specific role. Once you have that, and we derive that data from the assessment as well, from an assessment, we understand what success looks like in that role. From there, we take language that we know will resonate with the type of person we're looking for. And I don't know, Gordon, if you've ever, back early in the day, I don't know, when you worked for someone, or even if any of your children are applying for jobs and they see a job and they say, you know what, this is me. This job is perfect for me. Have you ever had that experience?
Somewhat.
Well, oftentimes we talk about understanding that you're like who your audience is. Who are you trying to attract for the role, and speak to them in a way that it resonates with them. And what you do by doing that is you ultimately your net is smaller, but there's a lot more quality in that. Much more targeted towards the person that you're trying to attract. And then, in terms of going out and looking for talent, is obviously you need to look at experience, knowledge, skill set, what can be taught, what can be, learned, what do you need right away? And oftentimes these are the questions that I have with my clients, because what is realistic? I hear sometimes, oh, they can learn that. Well, what is your expectation for learning that? Is it 3 weeks or is it 90 days? And that comes into play as well, because oftentimes if you're not meeting expectations, I know employers who are quick to say, we need to replace this person, they're not working out. And, that's time and money.
Yeah.
And so the idea is to really fully have a fully vetted interview process. And that doesn't mean a long interview process. That means a thorough interview process that identifies what it is that you're looking for that will help in terms of the individual, the behaviors, the skill set, the experience, and the knowledge that will help drive the business forward. The other piece of this is, again, coming off of the pandemic, if you're an employer and you're not offering flexibility right now, you're going to get passed on, or you're going to get the talent that can't, that isn't the best of the best. And the reality is everyone's on, it's now become, I shouldn't say everyone, but it's becoming a playing field where most employers are now offering flexibility. 5 years ago wasn't the case. Today, it's the standard. It's like getting PTO or getting sick time. It's the standard. And as an employer, if you're not offering it, you're going to have a harder time attracting talent.
Yeah, I would imagine. So I want to just ask kind of a question around, so for the listeners or the viewers, what I do is I send out a request for the people that I'm interviewing or talking to give me some insight about the things we want to talk about. And one of the things that Carla put on her list was helping clients becoming the best version of themselves. So I want to ask the question from your perspective: is it more difficult to get the business owner to become the best version of themselves, or more difficult to get the employee who works for that business owner to become the best version of themselves?
That's a great question. It's getting the employer becoming the best version of themselves is probably the bigger challenge. In today's day and age, the onus is on the leader to navigate and to adapt and adjust to their team. And the reason for that is because you're going to lose them. They're not, it's just, they're going to go. And so the idea is, and when I say being the best versions of themselves, what I mean is I don't want my leaders to change. I don't want my principal owners to change. They are who they are. What I want them to do is be aware of how they show up, be aware of how they communicate with somebody, and adapt that, adapt that style for the individuals that they are leading. And you might think, wow, this is really difficult. It's a lot of work. And it is work. It's not easy. If it were easy, everyone would be doing it. But like anything, you have to practice and you have to continue doing it. And, and I think that with practice and with doing it, you're going to see great results. You're going to see, the employees that would walk through fire for you. You're going to see the employees who will take that client call at 7 p.m. because it's important to the business and it's important to the client and to you. They're going to treat your customers so much better because they love what they do and they love who they're doing it for. And so it's a ripple effect. If you treat your employees poorly, they're going to treat your customers poorly. And eventually they're going to leave.
And your customers will leave with them.
And your customers will leave with them.
So let's move on to successes. You left a corporate job, started a business, woman-owned business, you're successful. That's all great stuff. Let's also focus on some of your client successes and tell us maybe a couple of key stories that you like to talk about with what you've done to help clients become successful.
So early on, when I started my business, I was coaching a mid-level funding director in a non-for-profit. And I was brought in by the president of this non-for-profit because this individual had been passed over for a promotion, and it was sort of her consolation prize was to get a coach. And that was ultimately that was the attitude that they had about, well, we're going to help you. We're going to get you a coach to get you. So next time to improve you. And when I was fortunate enough that she was open. This was somebody who I think her ego had been shattered a bit because she was passed up for the promotion. And so in her eyes, she believed in the cause and she wanted to stay, but she wanted to be successful and didn't know how. And so she was open. And we did a lot of work with her. I did a lot of work with her, really understanding who she is as an individual and how she shows up and what that means to different people within the organization. After 6 months of working with her, a little before 6 months, it was probably month 5, her boss left. And so this position was open again. In month 8, she got the job. And not only did she get the job, she became, she had the highest, and it had so much more. It was her attitude, but it was also her output. So she had raised the most money that they had ever raised in the history of the non-for-profit that year. She was engaging other members of the team that didn't even work with her. They were giving her accolades, unsolicited. And this was an individual who, when I started working with her, was shattered. Really, she was broken, and in the sense of her self-esteem had been shattered. And at the end of 8 months, this was somebody who was driving that organization. So that to me is one of my proudest accomplishments, because she was somebody who found her light again. That's she great. She changed her mindset. Yeah. And it changed things for her. So I'm so proud of her. The other one, there's other, I had a client who, my 1,500 person sales force, they are a sales organization. They were experiencing high turnover. Employees were not engaged. They weren't really, the ones that were there because they had been there for a long time, and they, their compensation plans were good, were solid. Well, they were introducing a whole new set of technology services that they needed to sell. And what was happening was they were getting resistance from employees who had been there a long time, and they were having a really hard time attracting younger talent because of their brand being known as a little bit of old school. So what we did was, I went in, we talked about what the role looks like, what success looks like in the role. We identified a profile that would be successful in that particular role. And more importantly, we worked with the managers to understand their leadership styles. Are they attracting the talent that they want to attract? Are they training in a way that is resonating with the talent? What is their communication style like? What are they telling the employees that have been there for a long time? And how are they getting them excited about these new services? And how do they get them engaged and up to speed so that they do feel confident? And so we did a lot of work with them. They've now been my client it's going on the 4th year. And when we look at their turnover rate has actually decreased by 10%. So when you translate that into dollars, it's straight to the bottom line. We're looking at over $1 million to the bottom line that this organization has saved because they have been able to reduce their turnover rate. And they're approaching talent differently than they ever have before.
That's amazing. So in addition to reducing turnover, how do you measure the increase in productivity or the increase? You must be able to measure the increase in sales productivity as well, correct?
Yes. So you measure the sales productivity because you start to see, the way they have their comp structure is tied to new and existing business. Okay. So new and existing upsell. And so you're able, and some people are better at one than the other. So that was part of the organizational redesign, was identifying who's going to go after the new business, because there's a different kind of style. There's more of a hunter mentality for new business versus upselling, which is more of an account management, customer service type of selling style. And so it was organizing, who's in what role, and some roles they would have to do both, but providing them with the support to do both. So first, it's identifying the behaviors that will that will allow for success in the role, whether it's a hunter, new business, or an account manager, farmer, upsell. And then the other way of identifying productivity is they were very clear on what their quota was. They were very clear on what the deliverables were and the expectations were. And by working with each individual, understanding, well, what's keeping you from hitting this quota, or what's keeping you from being successful, they were able to then build support systems or support structures for the individual. Some people just didn't cut it. And sometimes you have the data and that they're not inclined. Not everybody's a natural born, salesperson.
Right.
And it's, and it's very hard to learn it. You can, but it's hard and it takes
Right.
time. And I think oftentimes, a lot of my clients, they'll get the results. They have the data in front of them and they say, yeah, but they came from this company and they were, and they have this skill set and they say they've proven, they're proven and they can do this. But the reality is, oftentimes when you ignore that data, the truth eventually comes out. We're taught to interview to sort of make ourselves better than what we are in interviews, and some people are just really good interviewers and they have a knack and an ability to present themselves in a way that makes you feel like this person can really hit it out of the park. And often, oftentimes they might not be able to, and the data is there and it says that. So I always say, you take the data, it's part of it. It's a data point. It shouldn't be your end all be all, but oftentimes it does not lie. So look at it from a holistic standpoint.
Great advice. I think we could probably go on for hours and hours talking about, employee engagement, building the right sales team, listening to the data. There's so many facets to this conversation, but I want to be respectful of your time and everybody who's listening. So any last points that you want to go over?
Sure. I think at the end of the day, it starts with you. It starts with the leader. And, having a self-awareness of your leadership style is the critical component to anything, whether, it's leading a team, it's getting that promotion, it's, moving into a new role. It does start with you, and having that self-awareness is key. I think the other piece of advice is data is your friend, and data is there for a reason. And when it comes to your people, why be in the dark about it? Why, go through weeks and months of not knowing when you can have the answers or you can have an understanding within minutes. And 3 is, understanding that your talent, your people, your employees are your biggest asset. They are your business. You can have the best strategy in the world. You can have the best business plan in the world. You can have all the funding that your heart desires. But if you don't have the right people executing on that, you're not, you won't be as successful as you hope for.
It's just not going to come together.
It's not.
Great advice. Carla, great conversation. I really appreciate you coming on today and speaking to us and giving us your pearls of wisdom. If anybody who's listening or watching wanted to get in touch with you, how's the best way to do that?
They can reach me on my website, carlarojas.com. They can call me on my cell phone. I'm always picking up my cell. It's 914-715-7377. Or they can email me, cr@carlarojas.com.
That's great. And I'll put all that contact info in the show notes so it's readily available. Again, Carla, great conversation. Thanks for coming on today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. I enjoyed it.
That's great. So I'm Gordon Coyle. I'm the host of the New York Business Leaders Podcast. Thanks for listening or watching. If you haven't subscribed, please do that and rate this show so your friends can find it on iTunes and every other platform that podcasts can be found on. And if you have an interesting story that you'd like to tell on this podcast, please give me a call or drop me an email. My contact info will also be in the show notes. Until next time, thanks for listening and watching. Bye.
That's it for this week's episode of the New York Business Leaders Podcast. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss next week's episode. In the meantime, find more interviews and resources at nybusinessleaders.com.